Do you remember 2020? Humor me for a second here. Just close your eyes. Picture in your mind, when I say 2020, the year was 2020, what do you see? What do you see? How do you feel? Bless you. You can open your eyes. I remember 2020. I remember December 15th, 2020. I was in my office here on campus. I was working hard, trying to nail down the last details for our COVID Christmas Eve. My phone started to do that dance across my desk as it vibrated. I picked it up and I answered, hello, Mr. Muller. I'm with APS. We're over here at your property. See, my wife and I were building our home in Parks where we live today with our 3 kids, my wife Ellie and I. Yeah, we were just hooking up your power and we heard your wife screaming, we've called the ambulance, but there's been a terrible accident. You ever had a phone call like that? A knock at the door, a message, an email, something. You know, if building your own home doesn't push you to your limits, a health crisis certainly will. And that's what I want to talk about today, is having faith when we've reached our limits. When you're at the end of your rope, you've got nothing left to give, the tank is empty, you are out. How do we have faith in those moments? How do we put our trust in Jesus when you're tapped out and ready to call it? And we see in Mark chapter 5 some incredible stories, a couple people in particular, and I think we can see ourselves in these stories. I think we can learn from them, and hopefully we can follow Jesus better because of what we've uncovered here today. And that's our theme for the year. Come follow Jesus. We're talking about this the whole year long, especially in this series on Mark, because as Will taught us in Mark chapter 1, this is the call, come follow me. But we're going to take this all the way beyond this series in Mark, all the way to the end of the year. We want this to be our mantra, the words we live by, our battle cry, that we're going to follow Jesus. How do we do this better? How do we as the 99, those of us who follow Jesus, how do we do that better? How do we invite our ones, those people who don't yet know Jesus, but we know them? How do we invite them to come follow him as well? That's what we're looking at this whole year. And as I looked at Mark chapter 5, one of the things that I wrestled with a little bit, I was like, where do you begin with a chapter like this? You know, the opening verses read like something out of a horror flick, don't they? There was a man, he lived in the cemetery. People went in, but they didn't come out. Chains couldn't hold him. And then Jesus comes in, he casts out these demons. But it's not just 1 or 2 or 3, it's a legion of demons, and he casts them into a herd of pigs, and it's not like a dozen or 100 pigs, it's 2,000 stinking pigs, holy smokes. They go careening off a cliff to their bloody death. Nobody ate bacon in the region for years to come. I was like, yeah, I'm not touching that. Let's move to the next. Let's see what else God has in this passage for us. Mark's a really cool gospel. Action-packed. These are the ministry years of Jesus. We have 4 biographies of the life of Jesus in our New Testament scriptures. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They detail his birth, his life, his ministry, his death, his resurrection. Eyewitness accounts of who the man of Jesus was. And Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you'll sometimes hear this term, they're called the synoptic gospels. It's a Greek word, it just means to see together. Because in those 3 gospels in particular, less so in John, we see a lot of the same stories in the same order, often using the exact same words. These people all saw the same things. And the people we're going to look at today, the stories we're going to investigate today, you'll find them not just in Mark 5, you'll see them in Matthew 9 and Luke 8 as well. All this is in your sermon notes in your app. If you want to take a look at those later, it's really cool to see the similarities and some slight differences in description. Synoptic Gospels. See it all together. And what we're looking at today are two stories. Two people who kind of got threaded together, intertwined their lives because they had reached their limits. And at the end of it all, they put their faith in Jesus. Let's set the scene here a little bit. Jesus has cast out the demons. He gets back in the boat. He crosses over the Sea of Galilee, Lake Tiberias. It's a freshwater lake. It's over 13 miles wide at its widest point. He gets off the boat. He's on dry land. People have already seen him coming. Somebody knew who it was in that boat. A crowd is gathered, and as he's trying to make his way into town, the crowds are pressing in tight. It's like Disneyland on New Year's Eve, folks. I mean, nobody's getting to Pirates of the Caribbean too fast. It's tight. Everybody wants to see. I've heard of this guy, this crazy rabbi. I heard he feeds people. No, I heard he heals people. No, I heard he teaches the most incredible things. In today's day and age, we'll be like, I got to get a selfie. I think he might do a miracle in the background. Put it on my social. It's going to go viral. Right? Jesus. He's a celebrity. Celebrity rabbi. There's an oxymoron for you. The crowds are pressing in tight. And inside this setting of this massive crowd, people press in, we see two people, and they're connected by some strange coincidence. One is the number 12. You see, we have a small 12-year-old girl. She's sick, she's dying. We have a woman, a lady, who's been subject to bleeding, pain and suffering, illness for 12 years, the number 12. They're both daughters. One is the daughter of a synagogue leader, and the other will be called daughter by Jesus himself. So it's in this setting. Jesus is interacting with the crowd, doing what Jesus does. A man named Jairus comes to see Jesus. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came. And when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please, come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed." Who is Jairus? He's a synagogue leader. He's a man of faith. He's a respected figure in his community. People look up to him. Jairus is responsible for setting the services in the synagogue, who's going to do the teaching and the reading and all those things. People go to Jairus for advice. Hey, Jairus, I'm having this problem in my marriage. Hey, Jairus, my kids, I'm not quite sure. Hey, Jairus, I'm looking at this business deal, but I don't agree. People go to Jairus. I want to hear his opinion. He's a respected community figure. He had status. He was well regarded. He had wealth. He probably lived in one of the nicer homes in town. He was well-to-do. And he had influence. Jairus is what you and I would call a good person. Even more so, he'd be a role model. People look up to Jairus. But Jairus faced a crisis in his life. He had done all the right things. He talked the right way. He hung out with the right people. And then one day his phone started vibrating across the desk, and the bad news was delivered. "I'm sorry, sir, your family is under crisis. Your daughter is going to die. And there's nothing we can do." All his resources, all his influence, all his status suddenly amounted to nothing in the face of this crisis. Jairus had made all the right choices at all the right times, and here he was. He could do nothing to save his daughter. But then he hears about that zany traveling rabbi who heals people. And he thinks, this is it. I'm going to go see that guy. He's going to heal my daughter. I believe it. He has the power of the Almighty God. And so Jairus, and I'm taking some artistic liberties here, but I have this, maybe you've heard stories of how men in that culture didn't like run because they'd have to lift their robes and bare their ankles. But I just have this image of Jairus like running and bashing his way through the crowd, shoulder checking some people. And then somebody from the congregation sees him. Oh, wait, it's Jairus. Let him through. I know him. Oh, hey, Jairus. Yeah, let's get him to the front. He can talk to the teacher. The image in my mind is of a Wall Street banker in his fancy Armani suit and his $500 haircut, just rolling in the dust with snot and tears running down his face, going, "Save my daughter, please." Jairus had reached his limit. And he decided to put his faith in Jesus. Jairus shows us what it's like to put your faith in Jesus when you've reached your limit. And what does Jesus do? He says, sure, let's go. And off they go. This is a big risk for Jairus. There were some rumors circling about Jesus at this time. Some of the other religious leaders were like, this man's a heretic. And Jairus takes a chance on Jesus. He's willing to sacrifice his image, how people think of him. He goes through the crowd. He gets the attention of Jesus. They're on their way to his house. But what happens next? As they're making their way through this dense crowd, they're not moving real fast, but Jairus is pretty determined to get Jesus to the other side of the crowd, get him to his house. And as they're kind of shuffling their way along, Jesus stops dead in his tracks. And Jairus is like, we don't have a lot of time. Jesus says the most bizarre thing. Who touched me? He looks at the disciples. The disciples are like, did you touch him? Yeah. Did you touch him? Yeah. I think she touched him. No, he touched him. There's a lot of touching going on. Most bizarre thing in a densely packed crowd to say, who touched me? And his disciples are like, you see the crowd, man. Like, look how many people are here. Everybody's touching everybody else. It's a little alarming how much touching is going on here, actually. And Jesus says, no, one of these touches was not like the other. You see, this woman, she had heard of Jesus too. She had been suffering with some illness or affliction for 12 years. It says she was bleeding. The implication, if you read into the text a little bit, is that it's some sort of menstrual bleeding. Sorry if that's a little graphic, but that's what they're implying here. A dozen years of her life. What does she do? She's determined to get over this. She's determined to move beyond her suffering. She spends every penny she has. She exhausts every resource, every last bit of energy she has, trying to cure herself, rid herself of this affliction. I just want to live my life. I just want to move on from this. And it's a heavy burden, man. Not only is she suffering physically and she's bleeding all the time, how terrible that must be. But in this culture, in Jewish culture, for a woman to be bleeding like that, that would make her, by their religious laws, ceremonially unclean. She's not allowed to be around the group while she's like this. You got to go outside the city and wait for the bleeding to stop. Except in her case, the bleeding never stops. Wow, that sucks. She can't go to the synagogue. Jairus is at the door. He's like, I'm sorry, did the bleeding stop? Let me know when it does. We'll let you in. Don't touch anybody. We don't want them to have to cleanse themselves. She's living in isolation. She's living in shame. Now she's completely poor. She's got nothing left. She's at the end of her rope. And this wasn't sudden. This was year after year after year after year of suffering. So what does she do? She hears about Jesus. She decides, I'm going to slip into that crowd. No one will see me. It's a huge crowd. Hide right in the middle of it. He doesn't even have to know I touched him. I'll just touch his cloak. I have complete faith that will heal me. I'll move on with my life. No one will ever know I was there. Except Jesus knew, didn't he? Who touched me? Busted. She sheepishly comes forward. It was me. Here's my story. In that culture, as a Jewish religious leader, Jesus would have been like, way to go, lady. Now I got to go through all these cleansing rituals, and I got to do this thing, completely ruin my day. I can't go heal his daughter now. I've been touched by a bleeding woman. It's not what Jesus says. He looks her square in the face. He says, daughter, your faith has healed you. And he blesses her. Go in peace. Be freed from your suffering. Wow. It's not at all what anyone would have normally done under those circumstances. And Jesus has the power to heal her, and he demonstrates that power with a radical compassion. The same way he would do for you and for I. And all the while, Jairus is standing there, right? Remember, we're on the way to Jairus' house. This interruption comes, and Jairus is sitting there going like, this is really inconvenient timing. I'm kind of in a hurry. But then at the same time, he's intrigued and fascinated going, what's he doing? Is he going to heal her? Is she healed? Is she not healed? I don't know. Oh, she's healed. Oh, this is great. Oh, this guy really does have power. Oh, thank God. I put my trust in the right guy. Like he can heal my daughter. If he can heal her, 12 years. My daughter hasn't been sick near that long. Like we're okay. We're in the clear. Jairus begins to have faith. He begins to hope. He's excited, right? And so they kind of start making their way. But just as they're on their way, right at that moment, the plot thickens, doesn't it? The crisis deepens. Some people from Jairus' house, they show up. Hey, Jairus, we got here as fast as we could. Sorry, man. It's too late. She's already gone. We don't need to take up any more of the rabbi's time. He's got a lot of people that want to see him. The feelings Jairus must have felt at those words. Hanging his head. And Jesus overhears this. And he comes alongside him, again with a demonstration of compassion. He says, hey, don't be afraid. Just believe. Don't let your fear overwhelm you. Don't let it overtake you. Don't give in to the hopelessness or the despair. Have faith in me. Believe in me. I promise you won't be disappointed in the end. And Jairus thinks back. In his darkest moment, he witnessed that woman's faith and she was healed. And so he sets aside his fear and he chooses to believe that the Son of God can help him. I think those of us in this room, many of us, could probably be divided in these times of crisis. When we look at reaching the end of our limits, we could be divided into one of these two kind of cases for the sake of our illustration today. Maybe you're a Jairus. Maybe you look in the mirror and you think, I'm doing the best I can. I think it's a pretty good job. I'm a good person. People like me. I don't yell at my kids all that much. I go to work, I go to church, I pay my taxes. I'm a good person. But then crisis strikes. Your phone rings, and you get the call. Where do you turn in that moment when crisis strikes? Do you run to Jesus? In maybe even an embarrassing way, demonstrate that you are willing to put your faith and your trust in him? Or maybe you're like the woman. Crisis didn't just pop up out of nowhere one day. It's been here for a long time. It's an unwelcome bedfellow, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you have prayed and prayed. You have tried everything. You've spent money. You've invested time. You've asked for help from all the right people, and it just won't give. You're at your limit. Don't be afraid. Just believe. I think for us to take some steps that demonstrate that we're going to engage with that level of faith, I think it requires a few things of us. So I jotted down a few ideas. What does faith like this require from us? And the first one that popped in my mind is we have to admit this is where we're at, right? We have to confess this. At least admit to yourself, I'm at my limit. I'm just so done with this. We have to be willing, like Jairus was, to let go of our image. It's one thing to confess to yourself that you're at your limit. It's another thing to let the mask down and let people see that you're at your limit. But for so many of us, exercising this kind of faith, demonstrating that our faith truly is in Jesus, it requires us to let go of that managed image. It requires us to be willing to even look foolish. Not just for people to know, but for people to look at us and go, why is he in the dirt? Such a beautiful suit and haircut. Oh, what a mess. Oh, this guy's a piece of work. Let the image go. We need to believe that Jesus' power is greater than our problem, because it is. I will remind you that the Son of God was executed and put in a tomb, dead, stone cold dead, and he rose from the grave. Your problem is smaller than that. Requires that we take action in the face of that fear. It's okay that the fear comes on like a tidal wave. I remember sitting in the driveway at my in-laws' house when I got that phone call, and the fear, what is my life going to look like? Will she ever walk again? But we just did the next right thing, and we kept praying, and we kept trusting. And the last one, because this, I think, really bears some examination. We need to remember that his solution, it doesn't always look the way I want it to. His timing is so much different than what I think is ideal. You think that interruption was super welcome by Jairus when it happened? We don't know everything that's going on here, but we still need to trust him. And I know it's really easy to look at situations like this and go, wow, Dan, yeah, like they had a problem. They went to Jesus. Their problem went away. 1 + 1 = 2. That's really awesome. But I've done everything. This thing still haunts me. I still carry it around. This sickness, this anxiety, this depression, this addiction, this hopelessness. I don't know what to do with it, man. These bills don't pay themselves. These people, they hate each other, or I hate them. I don't know how to resolve any of this. You sure make it look easy when you read that story. Yeah, it's nice to pack it all up into a 30-minute sermon and say it's going to be great. He's still working in your life. He worked in ours. After 5 surgeries, that was my wife standing there playing piano all morning. Not only does she walk, She plays piano. She's around. We raise kids together. We have our life. We put our faith in Jesus. It's taken 4 years and 5 surgeries. And her foot still hurts. I trust in Jesus. You can trust in Jesus. Our mandate is to follow him. Join me and follow him. Like Jairus did, like the woman did. If you're in the throes of grief right now, a couple of things just as we wrap up our time here. We're starting a new group. You're going to find the details for this in your app. You want someone to walk with you in this season. This is a great resource for you. Check it out in the CCOF app or ask somebody at the New Year spot. If today is hard, or any Sunday is hard, we're here encountering the presence of God through worship and communion and teaching and prayer every week. And one of the things that we do here is we have a prayer team that makes themselves available towards the end. At this point, in every service, they go to the back. They will pray with you. They will pray with you as long as you need. They're dedicated to that. Join them back there. If you want someone to pray with you today, take that opportunity. Pray with me now. Jesus, we thank you that even though this life is messy, that it's hard, that we can come to you in faith with our problems, and that you don't turn us away. You don't send us packing. We're not met with disdain. We see your power and we're met with compassion. That we can have faith even at the end of our limits, and you will be there to sustain us and carry us through. And your ways are not our ways. Help us to believe in the face of fear. We love you. We worship you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, that was amazing. And I hate to follow that mood with announcements, but that's what we're going to do. So if you are new here, we're so glad that you've joined us this morning. There is a table in the lobby that says New Start here. We'd love for you to stop by. There's a free little gift for you and just a space to connect and tell us how you found us and a little bit of your story. So please stop by there if you are new. Today is the second Sunday of the month, so that means it is Second Sunday Fun Day. And that is in the small auditorium. We have a bounce house in there, we have some snacks in there, and we're just creating space to connect with each other. So please stop by, hang out, get to know somebody new, ask them a question, say hello. But that's just a space. I would say it's too cold for us to be outside and use the patio, but it's actually not, which is stupid because it's February. But that's why we do it inside over the winter, is because we can't use the outside space usually. So please come over, have some snacks, get to know some people. Second Sunday Fun Day is today. If you don't know where the small auditorium is, just keep walking down the hall and following the noise. You will find it. This was a packed weekend for our church. We had on Friday night, a lot of us were here for a night to shine. Yeah. It was awesome. It was so fun. There was more people there than we've ever had before. It was such an amazing night. And I've just heard some awesome stories about just some of the awesome things that came out of that. I heard somebody even got somebody's number, so we'll see what goes with that. But anyway, it was an awesome night. And I think many of you don't know that actually the next night, Saturday night, we had 150 people in this room celebrating Chinese New Year together. A lot of the people in the Chinese community in Flagstaff came by here to just have space to connect and celebrate New Year together. I was here. It was just an awesome time and really good food. But we were packed this weekend with events. And so I just wanted to say thank you, because it's because of your giving to Unfinished, you're giving to the church, that we can do these things, that we can pack this room 2 nights in a row with such amazing events and outreaches to our community and just space for people to meet each other and to find Jesus even. So thank you for the ways that you contributed, not just to people getting baptized in Ethiopia, but community events that really can change people's lives here as well. If you are not part of our Unfinished Giving Initiative, where you are welcome to join. There's ways to give on the screen. But I just wanted to say, you are doing amazing things through your giving in our church, and it is awesome. So thanks. Last thing we do Every service we end with a question. So I'm going to make you guys stand up right now. And the goal is to ask somebody you did not come with. So if they were in the car with you this morning, you cannot ask them. So ask somebody else this question. What are you doing for Super Bowl Sunday? Ready, go.